Okay. So let's look at the different, subtopics as part of this agenda. So we will see why we need data privacy and how does this framework look like from an Informatica's offering perspective, and how we can achieve sustained privacy on governance. We will look at the nuts and bolts and form of sensitive data and policies, and eventually what is the view that end user will get once they achieve this integration, right? We all are in data 3.0 world where there is a lot of data that is coming in, and it is just growing, right? So we all know that it is not just restricted to one server or one database or a one cloud infrastructure. So in an enterprise, data is everywhere. Either it might be sitting in someone's laptop, which it is pretty sensitive in nature, or it could be sitting in cloud. There could be some sales data, some confidential HR information sitting in some workday application. So you name it, you have it. So obviously, it's a major challenge. The challenge is not just the data which is sensitive, but the associated breach. Once there is the risk of the data getting breached, it becomes a deadly cocktail, right? So it is like you having money and you kept all the money in at your home, right? So then the headache is very huge. If you don't have money and if you have a beautiful home, no worries. Even if a burglar comes in, you may not find much. But when you have both these things, you will always feel bad, right? You will always have that risk, or that fear will be there. So in that scenario, as I say here, once they are combined, it becomes a deadly cocktail. So you need to have some checks and balances. You need to have some regulations. You need to have laws. You need to have some penalties so that either the enterprise which is managing the data, or if something goes off the end, there has to be some way out where the loyalty and trust are retained, because enterprises do run based on loyalty and trust. Nobody wants to go to a bank, or nobody wants to go to a setup which is which is not taking care of their own data, because these companies or these enterprises will not be retaining their data, but they will be retaining our data, right? If it's a bank, or if it's an insurance company, or if it's even, let's we go to a point of sale, we are going to give a lot of our personal information, right? So all that data has to be properly maintained, and you are still the owner of that data. So in that scenario, data privacy becomes a big picture, not for the enterprises, but for us. And eventually the enterprises have that double, it's like a double-edged sword, if you ask me. They need to make sure that they gain customer confidence, or the end user confidence and trust, but also make sure that the data is insulated from, from breaches. The breach can happen anywhere. It could be an internal guy who could be involved, or it could be something happening through some external agency as well. So we don't know, so that's a fire on top of which they are maintaining our information. So privacy becomes a huge thing. Now privacy is one face of the coin. The other side of the coin is governance, right? So just by privacy, it's just the we are meeting one side of the coin. The other side, when the governance framework, when there is a proper governance framework with privacy regulation, then organizations will achieve some sort of equilibrium. So this is the objective of the integration of Axon with data privacy management. As Ramesh was saying, this is an evolving integration. So there are a lot of things that are there now. There are a lot of many things that are coming, and this is something that you should always keep an eye on in terms of what's happening with respect to data governance framework for privacy regulation. It all starts in Axon. If you look at this particular flow diagram, you define and manage policies in Axon. That is where you are defining your organization rules, policies, and regulations. And once you do that, on the data privacy management side, you have the option of discovering the data which is personal, the data which is sensitive. So this data is discovered by data privacy management, which again is similar to your enterprise catalog, but will only handle sensitive and personal data. Okay. And once you're discovered and once you know where your sensitive data is, where the personal data is, then enterprises have to get into mapping those identities. They need to identify, they need to properly index that. They have to define the data subject rights, and which again happens in data privacy management. As I said, you are the owner of that data which belongs to you, which is now retained by those enterprises. They have discovered it, they have found that your data is there in multiple locations in their ecosystem. So, but whenever you ask that, whenever you are, because it's your data, you can ask it anytime. So that is where data privacy management comes into play in having its own data subject access rights. So the DPM comes up with its own way of um, allowing you access to the to your own data in a process bound manner. Okay, and then uh, there has to be ways to protect the data. So it's not just about the data that you have. You may want to understand the data that is there. The enterprises would like to understand the data. They may want to do a risk analysis of that. They may want to even simulate that storyline, and and also define some protection plans. Eventually, you may want to go and protect the data. Some of these things like linking this with Axon is still work in progress, but this is the eventual uh, place where we eventually want to go to. Okay, and as I said, how you protect, there are masking tools, there are encryption options which DPM provides you as part of its own capability and as part of its own some of the sister tools that Informatica offers. They help you to do that. And once you did that, so you may want to come back to Axon and communicate and make sure that this information is available in the form of risk indicators, visualizations, and reports, so that the stakeholder is aware of how much risk they are getting exposed through the sensitive data that is part of those systems and those resources. For example, if HR manager should be aware of the sensitive information that is there in their databases, so that the HR system will have some risk, and this risk should be visible to the management so that they can initiate some protection on top of that. So overall, all the stakeholders will get to see that from an Axon perspective, whereas your technical tool in this scenario to discover and classify and to manage your sensitive data obviously is data privacy management. So this is in a nutshell about how this integration is and all about. We will go further and open the windows and see what is there in this integration. Okay, right. So to achieve sustained privacy and governance, so as we discussed in the earlier slide, we started with defining the security, the portability, and the retention policies for your data, the data which is sensitive in nature. Then what we will do is we'll discover relevant data and assess the coverage and risk cost, and and alert the end users on any deviations and anomalies. And eventually we will measure and monitor the attainment goals, attainment of these metrics against the policies. So that is what we would call it a sustained privacy. And it's not just one time activity, it's a journey, it's a process. And whenever there are some updates and mitigations happened on the data that gets exposed, you will get the update back on the Axon side, so that the stakeholders can take appropriate and time bound decisions. Yep, Ramesh. Thank you, Ramesh. Thanks for your time. Right. So we will move further, and we'll see what are these all about. Okay. So this integration is basically an API based integration. So there is not much that you need to do in terms of configuration. There is no need of agent. There is no need of any third party tool that you bring into the scheme of things. You just have to provide some information about data privacy management in the admin panel of Axon, and you are very much good to go on this integration. So as I said, there are three touch points now with respect to this integration. We will go through them one by one. First one is you can link the systems and data stores. So this is something that you can see that you have already done that. Uh, there is some thing that you should be aware of. Uh, the data stores and resources are one and the same. In EDC, you were seeing them as resources, and in DPM, it's called data stores, but mean the same. Going forward, maybe in probably in the coming days, you might be seeing the same term used for data stores, that is resources. Okay, this is the first integration, and the second touch point or integration is very important one. This is setting up the policies or the regulations on the Axon side to the I know the policies on the DPM side, and in that way the sensitive data that is discovered as part of these policies or assigned to these policies through these policies will now be visible or synchronized with the governance policies on the Axon side. So this is the second integration, and third one is about process. So any processes that are defined in Axon, they can be listed on the DPM side on its dashboard, and you can make the relationships. And in that way, even from a persona who is on the data privacy management tool, they can view what are the sensitive data that gets linked or synced due to the processes that are defined on the governance tool, that is Axon. Any questions? Okay. Right. So what are these? See, I know you have seen the systems on the earlier integration. So any system that you see, as I said, that can be assigned or associated with what I would call it as the data stores here. So these are the resources. There is slightly different view here in terms of resources. When you look at from the DPM side, it comes up with something called as some numbers that you see. These are the risk scores of these data stores. How much of sensitive data they do have? How much is that getting exposed? And in that way, you can easily once you link the systems and resources, these risk scores will now be reflected upon on the data privacy management, sorry, on the Axon side for all the resources that have been discovered on the DPM side. So what you would eventually see is something like this, the sensitive data, which will have some risk score, and they will have some sensitive fields and some residual risk cost. Let's say if this database is getting exposed or breached, the organizations would be facing a hit of $849 million. So all these can be configured and defined and set up on the DPM side, and that information can be, once the systems are or the link to the data sources, then you can see that information on the Axon system side. So if you see on the left hand side, I'll do a demo, but I just want to quickly cover here. So it will show you what are the systems, how they are linked and to the system, and what is the system. Now system is a collection of those resources and how much data is getting exposed. So that information is seen, and if there is a lineage, even that lineage will also show how the risk score is getting proliferated and what are the mitigation plans. And the system will list out all the resources that you have manually linked. So this is a manual linkage. If you remember manual onboarding, it's something similar to that. So you are going to manually link each and every resource which will contain sensitive data, and the risk score is nothing but accumulation of all these resources. The risk score of all these resources is combined, and you will be seeing that on the system dashboard. Okay. The second one is policy, which is crucial in the given storyline. So you might have a specific policy for GDPR or CCPA or PHI or anything on PCI or PII. So you can define any policy on the Axon side. Those are your governance policies. So those governance policies, they can be linked to something called as classification policy or security policy. What are these? Let us see them one by one. So on the DPM side, you can define your classification policy. Classification policy is collection of data domains that is meant for a specific cause. In this example on the screen, you are seeing something associated with CCPA. So Informatica provides you for out of the box discovery or the classification policies. One is with the CCPA, the other one is with GDPR. Then there are five. If I'm not, there are five in the current version. Earlier there were four. So CCPA is now added on request. Okay. So those five data policy, the other three are PCI, PHI, and PII. So these five policies are given to you. You can modify them or you can customize them, or you have an option of creating a duplicate or creating a new one. And these policies are nothing but collection of data domains. So it's basically how you classify and how you discover your data, how you identify your data. Because SSN, what is SSN? It's a 9-digit number pertaining to the citizens or people who are. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. It is more for the people from United States. So it's something like SSN. In India, we have something called as Aadhaar. In Europe, there may be something similar to that. So how you would find a specific 9 or 10-digit number as SSN? So how do you, because any 9-digit, 10-digit number, I think cannot become an SSN because it has some specific regex pattern. So how do you discover that and tell that that is SSN? So that is where your data domain will come into play, and nearly 110 plus data domains are given to you by Informatica, shipped as part of the product, you know, uh, you know, um, release. So you can add your own if you are doing some new formula for a, let's say somebody discovers a virus COVID-19, formula, and you can put a regex pattern in, and you can discover that medicine formula, something like that. So so you can define your own data domain, and that data domain will be listed, and you cannot discover your data for each and every data domain. That is where the classification policy will come into play. A collection of classification policies for a specific cause is what is meant for, and that is how it is been defined. Anyway, when I get into the demo, I can show you what and how these policies look like. And once these policies are defined, so you may want to use that to discover your sensitive data. So you now execute this policy on a specific data store or a collection of data stores, and try to find how much of sensitive data meant for one or more policies. You can discover that, and once the discovery is happened, then you can tell that hey, this is the score that it carries, and then that information can be relayed back to that specific policy, and you can see that in the dashboard. Hey, the CCPA policy has some 10 data stores or 10 resources which are sensitive data with CCPA, and they are contributing to some risk number. Okay, so that is what it will tell. So management will have an easy bearing on that information as well. Okay. Now the third integration is with the process. And what process is, if you have a specific process and and if the systems and resources are already linked, or the system and data stores are already linked in the first place, then you can see the proliferation for that process for of those data stores through the process itself, and that information, due to the integration that we have, can be now seen on the DPM side. So what are the different data stores that are getting impacted by that process? So furthermore, you can go ahead and initiate some remedial action or some protection on the DPM side. So all these things I will quickly show it in the live environment. Okay, right. I will close this here. Now I'm on the search page. Okay. So what you are seeing is all the data that is on the dashboard, Axon Unison search dashboard. I can go and create my regulation here. So what we have done is we have created some out of the box regulations. One is the CCPA, there is GDPR, and there are a couple of other items that are listed here. I'll quickly latch on to the CCPA regulation. So it will tell me about this regulation. It'll have all the standard inputs, and it has what are the different components for this is listed here, and does it have any relationship with other entities, and who are the stakeholders. Since this demo environment has limited data, so you will find nothing much in that. However, when you come to impact, you will see something interesting. So there is a specific policy that has been attached or assigned to the CCPA here. So when I click on this privacy of personal data policy, I'm going to see something interesting here. Okay, so this is my policy here, and this is policy is meant specifically for all your privacy and personal data relationships that are already established. Okay, and what you're now going to do is I can't do anything here. Why? Because I'm not logged in. So any end user who has Axon viewing as public should be able to see the data, but he or she cannot see anything which is set as private, and there won't be any action listed against him. What you can do is you can just download a PDF report. Okay, and and in addition to that, there is something that I want to bring to your notice. What we have is something interesting, which is known as walkthroughs. So these walkthroughs will help you to understand a few more features here. So if you are interested to learn some new things on Axon, if you don't have enough patience to go through the uh, product admin product guides, so you can just click on them, and that will help you to walk through the tool and help you to understand some of those features for which you may want some information immediately. So this is another way of learning the product on the fly. I just wanted to bring to your notice so that you can catch on these walkthroughs that will help you to understand at least many of the features, and this is evolving over a period of time. You will have walkthroughs for most of the features which are available on the product. Okay, now let me log in. Let me get into our main storyline. Let me log in as John. Right, so I'm going to click on edit here. So before I do that, what I've done in the beginning is I'll go to the admin panel. I had to show you this in the beginning. So if I go to customize and configure and click on system settings, and select data privacy management. So you need to provide all the basic information about the data privacy server, the port, the login name to the server, and the password, and the type of login. Is it a namespace? I mean, is it native or it's basically a native connection? You don't have a Blaze or Hadoop mode of connection. So provide all these basic information. Okay, and once you provide that, then you need to run the param sync, and the integration is ready for you. So the integration is complete once you provide this information. You need not have to, do anything other than providing any inputs other than what you provide here. But make sure that you provide the password. And if you give erroneous password, then the API call will not happen or the population will not happen here. Okay. Now let me go back to the previous one. Okay, sorry, I just put the wrong window. I'll go back to the I'll go to the policy one. As I said, I can directly go to policy here and click on the privacy of personal data policy. Click on edit mode, right? So here there is a field called security and classification policy reference. So when I click on this pencil icon, what I'm getting is I'm able to see these entries, and these entries do come from the data privacy management side. So there is something called security policy, and we will go to the DPM and see what they are. And there is also something called as classification policy. So what I have done here is I have selected CCPA, and I have closed. As soon as I select this window, it will uh, close. So I have selected the CCPA policy here for this privacy of personal data policy, and I can still save because anyway that is already there. I will not be able to see further. I need to save and close so that this window is now released. Now, when I have done that, so there is the graph icon here. If I click on this, initially you will see the data quality metrics for this policy. Further down the line, if I click on data privacy, so here I'm able to see some traffic here. So what is that? It is telling the risk score, okay, and this risk score is coming from 58 data stores, out of which 18 are in medium risk, 40 are there in low risk category. Potential cost impact is $3.5 billion. Why is this? Because this has some 1800 fields getting exposed, and a lot of records are also getting exposed because there is very little protection. So I have protected just 1.73% of the total fields here. So this protection might have happened through either we have used some standard protection techniques that Informatica offers, or I might have used a third party and updated that information here. So that is what I, as a policy steward or a stakeholder or the data protection officer associated with CCPA, I am able to see this information. Okay. Now, if I click on the CCPA link here, so it directly takes me to data privacy management. So let me log in here. Let me log in with an user here. And what it shows me is the CCPA policy. Okay. As I said, there are these data domains. These have been clubbed together, and these are the ones that I think have an impact on the outcome of what I'm able to see as sensitive data, right? So I'll go back to this window here, right? So here I'm able to see all the data that is already been discovered, right? So if I'm looking at this policy, and I can filter down and I can look for a CCPA, what is the data that is getting exposed, So in that way, I can see that there's a risk score of 14, and there is all these different data stores that are getting impacted. All that information is here. If I click further on these top data stores, I should be able to see all those data stores, which have data which is sensitive from a CCPA policy point of view. Let's say if I click on the sensitive fields, okay, in my Amazon S3, I have some couple of folders which contain some sensitive data. This folder may not have that. Let me go to one more folder here. So this has some 23 files. 35 data domains, and this is the policy impression, and this tells about if I further drill down, I can see what are the files and what are the sensitive data they contain. Let's say if I click North America CSV, it tells me which are the different data domains that are exposed, and it will contain, it might contain even you might even discovered GDPR also on it. That might even contain some data that is sensitive to GDPR policy also, so you can easily make out what it is, and this is the metadata of that particular file, okay, and where it is located, what is the size, and when it was last updated. So you can see all that information now, displayed, which has a very high risk score, and you may want to take necessary, reaction on that. You can also initiate an action, send an email to its stakeholder, or run a custom script, like if you want to initiate some protection, or do some you know some activity on the Amazon S3, you can do that. You can also export, okay, you can export this information, and it will be available in a comma separated file in that fashion. So you should be able to see all that which is sensitive in nature and which come under the jurisdiction of CCPA, right? If when I go back to the policy page, I'm able to see all that, and these are some of the data stores which come under the ambit of CCPA here, okay. And now the second integration what I was talking about was with respect to the system and resources. So this manage catalog link option, where you can go ahead and link the system and data stores or resources. When I click on manage catalog link, you are able to see the resources and physical fields. So there are two dimensions to this integration here. Customer might have gone with EDC and Axon integration. Some customer might not have bought EDC but would have gone with DPM and Axon. Still, the same links will work. Okay, the same linkage is something that you may have to perform. And once you have linked them, you will be seeing all the linked Axon systems and resources. Note that the resource and the data store both mean the same. You can click on, let's say I'll click on this specific system here, and I'll get to see the system view, okay. And further down, I can go and click on enterprise catalog. It will tell about all the different data stores that have been linked, and I can further click on the graph icon, and I can further go and click on data privacy, and it will tell me about the risk score and the cost, and if there is any protection and all that information, okay. So it says that there are 6 data stores. That's what we saw in the enterprise catalog tab here, right? So there are these 6 records which are now contributing to this risk score of 17, right? So but this is not linked to any policy here. So this is the relationship that is established because the systems and data stores are linked to each other. Because of this integration, I am able to see something else here, okay. I can go ahead and I can do something called as a data privacy overlay here. If I do that, I'm able to see an interesting view here, which will talk about if there are any other data stores which do have sensitive data, and if data is proliferating between if these systems are already connected, if they are proliferating, all that information will be seen on this page. And also if there is any data set associated, they will also be visible here. Since this is not linked to any other data set, there is no what we can call proliferation, you won't be able to see that. However, if I go to the client portal, I should be able to see some proliferation there. This is nothing but the same proliferation which you saw yesterday. Let me go to the client portal, interfaces. Right, so I can easily go to dataset lineage, and I can see the same, the lineage which was there earlier. Let me see if I can find something here. So I should be able to see the same lineage here. This you saw it in EDC, right? So now I will show the same thing to you in data privacy management. So if I go to top data stores, and if I try to filter it down appropriately in terms of targets, let me take the sales global data store here, right? So this is that same proliferation which was there. Why I'm not able to see some of these data stores? Because I don't have any rights to see that information. Because again, I as an user don't have access to see these data stores. That's why they are not visible to me. I can see a lot of things here. I can see the residual risk associated with these data stores, their location, from where these data stores are located, how data is proliferating, okay, and what are the processes associated with them, okay, and if they are, I can easily see that information here. So if I go scroll down below, so how am I getting this information? So this, the KYC, anti-money laundering, all these are all coming from the Axon side. So if you click on this process, it will take me back to the Axon interface, and it will tell me about the processes that are that are linked here. And it's basically it will tell you me which process it is associated with. It will not show you any data privacy scores as of now, but it will help me to understand which processes are linked to that. So how do I get to that? Because this process is specifically linked to this particular what I would call this system, and this system has access to that particular resource. So in that way, it is able to tell me how it is linked to that particular what we can call the data store here. Okay, so that is where I'm able to see that. I'll go back here, right? So in that way, I'm able to see that information on the screen. Further, I can play around with multiple things. I can say, hey, put the color coding in terms of what the score is all about. So this is a very highly interactive tool and highly interactive solution to, it will only look out for sensitive data, because EDC will look out for all metadata, but DPM is primarily, you position it so that it looks for only sensitive data. That is something which is that has some money value in terms of its exposure or breach for the enterprise which is retaining this data. Okay, so these are the integration that you have between Axon and data privacy management.